Hello, dear friend. Thank you for hanging out with a couple of multiples today. We are your hosts, Drew
and Garden System.
We are a married couple that both have dissociative identity disorder, or DID. Our lives are both ordinary and uniquely complex.
Perhaps you were introduced to DID in a movie or TV show, or maybe you have been diagnosed with the disorder, or you are a therapist that wants to learn more about working with a client that has it. Whatever the case may be, we realize that the majority of folks out there don't know that 1.5% of the population, which is about 120 million people all over the world, have dissociative identity disorder.
You are making a difference by choosing to listen to this podcast today because most of the research out there indicates that this condition is caused by repetitive early childhood trauma, which means that it is possible you have someone in your life right now that is either diagnosed or, more likely, undiagnosed or misdiagnosed.
We have created this podcast in hopes that sharing our story, a realistic view into the lives of a couple of multiples, will help raise awareness by demystifying the diagnosis and dispelling the myths and misinformation that is out there.
This first episode is a sneak peek into our everyday lives. And you, dear listener, can help by sharing this podcast with a friend or loved one. Please visit acoupleofmultiples.com.
Together, we can share our joys and hardships as we lead extraordinary lives in all corners of the world.
Hello there, and thank you for tuning in to this exciting first episode with Drew
and Garden System,
a couple of multiples. As you might have guessed, we are a couple happily married. And as the name implies, we are both multiples. What is a multiple, one might ask? We think the best way to explain is to allow you into our lives. We invite you to be a fly on our bedroom wall.
Wait, bedroom? That was fast. We're getting intimate right off the bat.
Well, we do want to give our peeps here a realistic view, right?
Yes, but why our bedroom?
Well, that's where it begins. Every morning at 6 a.m. when our alarms go off, I reach for my phone to turn it off while Garden System, well, why don't you tell these good people what you're doing?
Oh, I turn my alarm off too, and then I go right back to sleep.
So, while Garden System is continuing to snooze, I open my eyes, and the first thing I see when I swing my legs out of bed is the fish tank I have strategically placed at my bedside. It's there because the part of me that usually sees out through my eyes in the morning is my little, named Ramona. She's around 5 or 6 years old, and for the longest time, she didn't know where she was when we woke up.
Ooh, such a good point to bring up. We, and that's meaning all of me, can easily get disoriented depending on who is fronting. Having a new item that didn't exist in the past can help parts remember that time has passed and it is no longer then, it is now.
Exactly. So, Ramona often woke up thinking she was still in our old childhood bedroom, scared and completely disoriented. Years ago, we thought up the fish tank idea to ground her to the present. She picked out the tank, fish, and all the things in it. It's hers, something she created in the here and now. So when she sees it, she knows it's 2024 instead of 1989. Creating these grounding items and moments in our daily life that orient our parts of ourselves to the present moment is one of the key strategies that make our lives less chaotic.
You'll notice that we will speak in singular pronouns like I and me, and sometimes plural pronouns like we and us. The switching back and forth between pronouns is a common thing for people with DID. So, for us, mornings are extremely chaotic because we spent most of the night trapped in nightmares. We wake up already exhausted from being in fight or flight mode all night long.
I can relate with that. Before I processed a lot of my memories using EMDR, which we can get into more in a different episode, I had so many nightmares and didn't get a lot of sleep. Let's face it, I still wake up a lot.
It is also a struggle in the mornings when we wake up with littles out.
Littles, meaning child parts of ourselves.
I have heard people call them children or juveniles, but littles is how I hear most other folks with DID refer to them. Littles are typically child parts that are 0 to about 10 years in age. For us, our 3-year-old part, Daisy, is the one who is first out in the morning.
Or Jenny.
Yeah, or Jenny. So we have to spend the first part of our morning comforting them and grounding ourselves too. Really, grounding is a good skill everyone can learn.
It is. Everyone, singletons included. Ooh, I get to explain what a singleton is.
That is what us DID folk call anyone who doesn't have parts.
Hey, you stole my thunder, woman. Well, technically, everyone has parts, like your role at work versus your role at home.
But not as separate as those with DID. Like, even though we have a part that takes on work responsibilities, it is more than just a role. Parts hold certain memories that other parts don't have. Parts may have completely different opinions or beliefs even. Leanna has her way of being at work and a way of being at home, and that is different than, say, Sadie. How Sadie is at home or how she was at our internship. Due to switching, some parts may not have the same experiences as other parts, and therefore they developed a different perspective about the world.
Right. Leanna and Sadie are adult parts in her system, by the way. And now that we're enlightened and way off track, hopefully all of you out there have a better understanding of the difference between a singleton and a multiple. Back to Daisy and Jenny in the morning.
Okay, yes. So our mornings are chock full of dissociation.
Here we go again with all these big words.
Everyone dissociates to some degree. Most people experience it while driving. You arrive at your destination, but can't remember the actual drive, except when we dissociate in the morning. We can end up losing a lot of time. We have a lot that we have to get done, like get the kids ready for school, get ourselves ready for work, take the kids to school, get ourselves to work, and remember to make sure the pets have had breakfast and all the things.
Oh, to be fair, I feed the pets and take the first stab at trying to wake up the kids, although that never works. But yes, that would be a lot for anyone. Add dealing with being dissociated and disoriented in the mix, and you have a real situation.
It is easy to freeze up and end up, say, staring at the wall for like 30 or more minutes and just be completely unaware of the passing of time.
Which is why, after Ramona gets up and plays on our phone for 10 minutes while peeing.
Wait, whoa, TMI. We don't have to give that many details.
The peeps want entertainment, not just education. So, right, Ramona pees, and we agreed that if she gets up right away, then she could have 10 minutes to play games. While I, Lizzie, the adult part that goes to work, wakes up. When 10 minutes are up, it's my turn to get dressed and turn on the TV, so that Daisy and Jenny over there in the bed don't stare at the wall until noon.
Oh, the things we have to do just to get moving in the morning. Kilera, another one of my adults, thinks that it is absolutely ridiculous that we have to negotiate so much with the littles. But every part of us is important and needs attention. Ignoring the needs of the littles can lead to some major system breakdowns.
Exactly. Ramona used to not get out of bed in the morning before we made the arrangement that she could play on her phone right when she got out of bed. When you have a system of parts, it's like having a group completing a project instead of doing it all by yourself. You have to figure out what everyone needs and wants and make compromises. You also have to figure out who is best at what, and that determines who has delegated what tasks on any given day. If that sounds complicated, that's because it is. It literally took me years to figure out which part should be doing what, when, and some days it is still a lot of loud racket, arguing and headaches, while other days we all do our jobs like a well-oiled machine.
It takes a lot of work to get your system to cooperate together. We still haven't found a way to have a smooth morning. Although I do think it is more because we are feeling triggered from nightmares and we end up experiencing a lot of flashbacks to trauma while we are trying to get ready for the day.
Ugh, flashbacks are the worst. And yeah, for me, it's the nightmares that often trigger flashbacks in the morning.
So it's kind of important to understand exactly what a flashback is and how one might experience it. Flashbacks they're like memories from the past that pop up in the present. Sometimes they are visual, but not always. It can be a physical sensation in the body, which is usually how I experience them. For example, I might feel like I can't breathe. Other times it's emotional. I might experience an emotion kind of out of the blue, and it might not match my actual mood or make sense in comparison to what is actually happening in the present.
For my system, the flashbacks are usually visual. So when I'm looking out at, let's say, the bedroom in the morning, even though my eyes are open, I'm not seeing the bedroom. I see the distressing memory that happened in the past, as if I was really there. And like Garden System said, I often experience physical body sensations. And emotionally, I feel like I was feeling when the event really happened, which was usually scared out of my mind.
Also, when the flashbacks start, we might have a hard time remembering what we were doing, the day, the time, or where we are.
Yes, flashbacks can feel and be super distressing, not to mention disorienting. And when they happen in the morning when you wake up and you got to be somewhere important like work, the pressure of having to move quickly and not have time to work through the flashback and get grounded again is super hard. In the past, even sometimes still now, I find myself calling out from work for the day because of issues with flashbacks in the morning.
It can really be debilitating. Flashbacks can happen anytime during the day, not just in the mornings. This is one of many reasons why many with DID struggle to work at all and have to use disability. I have had to use short-term disability and take intermittent leaves from work in the past. Learning to get control of the flashbacks is no easy task. It takes a lot of practice, and for our system, a lot of therapy.
Exactly. Lots of practice and lots of therapy. I've had to talk to every employer I've ever worked for and either ask for less days or shorter days so I could go to therapy and spend time at work, less time at work in general. Because at work, I need to make sure only a certain part or parts are out, which can put a lot of stress and strain on a system, especially in the beginning of therapy when the system isn't working together as a team yet.
Learning to work together as a team is essential. In the beginning, there is not a lot of awareness of what we call switching. That's when parts change who is controlling the body. Initially, a system of parts develops as a way to cope with trauma. The one part of you as a child needs to attach to a caregiver for survival, so they can't know about the trauma that happens. The other part holds the trauma memories and keeps that knowledge. This compartmentalization can work for years, and no one outside the body or even inside the body will be aware of the multiplicity. The switching appears seamless. That is, until it doesn't.
Right. For me, the switching started to be noticeable to others when I was in middle school. People would tell me that I had said or done something that I had no memory of. I became confused when others were acting like they knew me, but I had no memory of them. I also couldn't remember what was being taught in my classes. You can imagine the trouble that caused. So without knowing I had DID, I decided as a part, me, Lizzie, to be out in the body when I was at school. It worked. I hung onto the minutes by tooth and nail and experienced less times when people would say something that I didn't remember. Unfortunately, as I grew older and was eventually diagnosed with DID and started to get to know all my parts, I realized my strategy of trying to be the only part out most of the time started failing. My littles were having tantrums that they had no time out in the body to play, and my tweens, teens, and other adult parts were not seeing their own unique goals realized. I figured out that we needed to share time out in the body and play life more as a team.
When I look back on how we used to call for Leanna to come handle situations back in college, it amazes me that it took us so long to figure out what was going on. I have heard from many other systems, that is people with dissociative identities, that have tried to have one part sort of take over life, and this part typically gets referred to as the host.
Like Lizzie, she is the host of our system.
And we don't have a host ourselves. We switch way too much. But more about that later. Parts, like you said, can have their own unique goals, and internal conflict about fulfilling these goals can lead to internal chaos, which leads to external chaos as well.
Yes. And the one thing we want to avoid in our adult lives now is chaos, whether internal or external, especially because both Garden System and I have careers. This is my 17th year, believe it or not, as a teacher.
And I have spent the last 10 years as a financial advisor after many years as a language arts and reading teacher. But I did recently graduate with my master's in clinical mental health counseling.
My job works out really well with my condition because I could relate very easily to the little ones, having little parts myself. I think the kids in my care feel comfortable with me, that I can be silly and fun, but also have the adult parts of myself be responsible and be a caretaker.
So for you, if a little is out being silly, it's totally appropriate because as a teacher, you're supposed to have fun while learning.
Yes, But at the same time, little parts like Ramona know when it is appropriate to play with the kids at school, like during recess. For the most part, it is our adults, Lizzie and Journey, that take on the teacher role at work.
Having good internal cooperation makes it easier for parts to share time appropriately, enhancing our ability to excel at work.
Yes, because all parts have their strengths, which is why when I teach, I have adult parts out that have the skills to do the job and enjoy being there. But the thing that has always bothered me about teaching is that I often see emotional and psychological red flags in my students that I'm not, quote, allowed to fix as a teacher. That's why I will also be getting my master's in clinical mental health counseling in the near future, because that's really where my passion is, to become a therapist and to be able to guide clients to live a fulfilling and functional life after going through trauma in childhood.
Yay! We are very excited for you to join the field of mental health. Work, meaning when we were a financial advisor and even during our teaching career prior to that, used to be very difficult for us before therapy. We didn't really understand what was going on and thought we just needed to buck it up. We did not realize that we were switching. Some days we felt really confident, and then others we felt clueless about our responsibilities. When memories are not shared across all parts, you can switch to someone who doesn't have the knowledge or skills needed to do the job. And having littles front at the wrong time can really be confusing. Now, we are a lot better about allowing the parts that need to be out at the right times. We are also better at sharing our memories with each other, so we are less likely to experience those moments of panic not knowing how to do something. When we decided to get our degree, we had system agreement that all parts would learn all the things to avoid any problems being a therapist.
Right, co-consciousness, when many parts share information about daily life and memories and are present at the same time, in the same moment, experiencing life together as a team.
There is one part that we could call the host of all things therapy, and that would be Sadie. And that's for our clients' sake, to have consistency in their therapeutic experience. When we first started seeing our personal therapists before co-consciousness, we struggled to remember what we did throughout the day. Our therapist would ask us, "So, how was your weekend?" And we would just stare at her in silence, trying to recall what we had done.
Yes, I think that's because you switch a lot more than I do.
We really do, which is why we go by garden system, because it refers to all of us, our parts separated hard into different roles.
How about you explain a little more about your system for these fine people?
Sure. It is a lot to keep up with. So Leanna is one of our main adult peeps, and there is a lot to share about her, Keelara, and Sadie, as they are also fictive parts, which in this case are characters from fan fiction, but we will have to save that for a future episode. Leanna has been the one to handle all of our finances and is great at all things related to our financial advising career. Another adult part we have is Victoria, and her identity and passion is tied up in all things domestic, being a wife, a mother, and trying to make our house look like it could be on the cover of Better Homes and Gardens. In fact, she is fussing right now that she doesn't get enough time out to do her job.
Victoria and Lizzie make quite the team when it comes to cleaning.
Our teenagers are like, "No," when both Victoria and Lizzie are out.
Yeah, then we are cleaning for the next 5 hours, the whole family.
Yep, once Victoria's out and gets started, there is no stopping her.
Right. And it's interesting to note in our relationship as two multiples, our parts that share similar interests or jobs tend to come out and team up and support one another, like Victoria and Lizzie, who also both tend to do the parenting. Maybe you should tell them more about the kids, or should I say teenagers?
Well, we do have 4 teenagers. Our oldest is off at college, about 12 hours away. Then we have 3 high schoolers, 9th grade, 10th grade, and a senior. And they are all very trauma and dissociation informed. They do like to try and get away with so much by just making us switch, though.
Me too. When Ramona wants ice cream, and usually it totally works. Then minutes later, we're all at the local Dairy Queen ordering the blizzard of the month.
Yeah, you all think you're getting away with it, but Daisy has totally tried to assert herself as mom. She has stomped her foot and declared that we are still mom and they have to listen to us.
Yeah, the stomping totally gives Daisy away. And at the end of the day, we all got ice cream. But is Daisy mom?
Great question. I can only imagine what some of you might be thinking about this little story. Littles are extremely misunderstood. They are childlike in many ways. Daisy is 3. She has this high-pitched voice when she talks. She shuffles her feet when we walk. And she is all about the toys and games. But she has been 3 for almost 40 years. Comparing her to an actual 3-year-old is not quite accurate. In short, yes, she is mom. For our system, every part of us recognizes the external biological children as ours, and each one of us understands the importance of carrying out the role of mother.
And truth be told, littles are never alone. In a lot of systems I know, including my own, a part is close by watching or taking care of the littles. If one of Garden System's biological children were ever in danger or need an adult part of her to help them, an adult part would be right there, even if Daisy was out in the middle of eating ice cream.
To our friends, family, and therapists, they might recognize seeing Daisy in the body and wrongly think that none of the other parts are listening and watching. So that is the example of the co-consciousness that we talked about earlier. How does your system manage the parenting, Drew?
Well, I think parenting is unique in so many ways for us as a system. For one, we joined this family a couple of years ago, so we weren't there from the start. That meant having some talks with the kids about what my role would be in the family. And it seems the kids have taken on well to having another mom, another parenting figure, not to mention another mom who is a multiple on top of that. Lizzie, me, our host, has always wanted to be a mom. So joining this beautiful family with 4 kids, or 4 teenagers, I should say, has been a dream come true. We very much enjoy the responsibilities of being a mom, like picking up the kids from school or checking on their grades or talking to their teachers. And we also hold a bit of sadness for not being there when they were younger. We feel like we missed a big part of all their lives. And quite a few of my parts wish we also had the experience of having birthed biological kids of our own. So I'd say being a parental figure now is a bit emotional for us, but definitely more happy than sad.
We love how you have come into our lives and wish you had been there from the beginning. The kids have really accepted all of you. So would you say that Lizzie identifies as the mom, and what other parts see themselves as in that parental role?
Well, yes, Lizzie definitely identifies as being mom, but also, like you mentioned earlier, every single one of my parts knows we are caring for these teenagers now, that we have a responsibility. All of them feel motherly towards the kids. But as far as who is out in the body talking to them about school or asking them to brush their teeth, yeah, that's usually Lizzie.
Now, I know that not every system out there operates the same way. There are systems who have parts that don't have that shared parental identity.
Yes, I've heard the same. Some parts in other systems say that they don't identify as mom, even though the body has had kids. I guess I could think of a couple of parts that would fall under that category, but they don't come out in the body much.
And even though we all recognize that we are mom, not every part comes out to parent. Kilara typically does not get involved in kid things. It is usually between Leanna and Victoria, and occasionally Sadie. Sadie seems to relate best to our third-born. Each of my adults really has their own unique parenting style.
Do you think each of your adult parts having their own unique parenting style is confusing to the kids?
We should ask them. I do think it does create some inconsistencies because the kids are not always sure what the expectations might be. And that's because Victoria holds the highest standards, followed by Leanna, and then Sadie has the whole gentle parenting thing down really good.
I've totally witnessed this. I think since the kids have known for years that there are multiple of you, that they have come to realize this, and it's their normal.
Yes. When the kids found out about our diagnosis, they were pretty unfazed. Their reaction was, oh, there's a name for that? Apparently, they had been manipulating switches for years to get out of chores or to get a little to come out and play with them.
Yeah, benefits of having a parent who's a multiple, haha.
I would not call those benefits.
I know, I was joking. Except for the ice cream. That is definitely a benefit.
We cannot argue with that one.
Okay, so we've taken you through quite a bit of our everyday life, including our morning routine, going to work, taking care of the kids. But we haven't talked about our evening routine and what that is like for us as multiples.
Another challenging part of our day. This time period is something that we have set aside for ourselves as time for littles to be out and play. After working all day and then being mom by checking grades, pushing for chores to get done, and reminding the kids to brush their teeth after dinner, the littles have not had much time to be themselves. So it's kind of important to honor this time because otherwise they will try to intrude during other parts of our day.
Yeah. And right about now, our littles are reminding us that we've been working on this podcast for far too long, and it's their turn. So the consequence of us continuing to adult into the evening instead of letting the littles blow off some steam could be a royal meltdown, which could bleed into the next day.
Although I do want to validate the littles that don't play. That could really be a whole episode all by itself. So Daisy might be chanting, Minecraft, Minecraft, Minecraft. But Jenny has long held the belief that she is not allowed to play. Yet she needs time in the body too. All parts need their time.
Right. Also, I have found if littles are doing fun things towards the end of the evening, we tend to have less flashbacks and nightmares at night. Night tends to be another time of the day when my system is in particular has more flashbacks. So if the littles are engrossed in a video game or are playing with Legos, they're less likely to have an episode of flashbacks or panic about it being night.
Nighttime is a reminder of bad things that happened. So we can deal with a lot of fears and flashbacks at night. Letting the littles out to play games, play with toys, or to make a mess with the paints is a really good way to provide some corrective experiences for the body.
I totally agree. So a singleton may come home and unwind by watching TV or reading a book or playing a game with their family. And a multiple essentially does the same thing, but with parts out that haven't had time in the body during the day, which tends to be littles. And they want to do kid type of things.
Exactly. Like our adults really want to finish reading our Stephen King book, but our littles would rather watch Snow White. So again, parts have different opinions and goals, and that sometimes creates a little internal conflict.
So having a routine of who is out at what time of day really helps that.
Sharing is caring.
Precisely. That really sums up a lot about us in a typical day in the life of a couple of multiples.
And in our next episode, we are going to dive deeper into the diagnosis itself, including our therapeutic journey. We went through a lot of therapists and a lot of psychiatric medications and misdiagnoses before finally figuring out that we both had DID. Looking back, there were a lot of flags that should have alerted the clinical professionals in our lives at those times. For the therapists listening, we hope that you can gain some insight on what to look for. If you are listening as someone with DID, we hope it validates your own experiences.
And I think one of our major hopes for this podcast is that it will further awareness so that people in the future don't have to go through years of suffering due to inappropriate treatments.
A person can spend an average of 6 to 12 years in the mental health system before they are correctly diagnosed with DID.
And we would really like to see that number change drastically in the future.
Thank you so much for listening to our first episode. We appreciate you taking the time to hear our story and learn all you can about this highly misunderstood mental health condition.
Please visit our website, acoupleofmultiples.com, and subscribe to our mailing list to receive future updates about new episodes and special guest speakers.
Our goal is to create resources for both people with DID and therapists that we will distribute from the website. We have some ideas for creating community spaces as well for support. Working together, we can make a difference on how DID is viewed, treated, and portrayed to the world.
Thank you again for hanging out with a couple of multiples today. From your hosts, Drew
and Garden System.
Thank you for listening to A Couple of Multiples, the reality of dissociative identity disorder. This podcast is intended for educational purposes and is not a replacement for therapy.
Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapeutic relationship with the hosts or any potential guest speakers.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. We would love to hear what you enjoyed the most.
You can visit our website at acoupleofmultiples.com for additional information and resources. and to also subscribe to our mailing list to receive future updates.
Remember, you matter and are loved for being all of yous.